Welcome to Shardcast, the Brandon Sanderson podcast. We're a bunch of mega fans giving you the news discussion and, of course, a lot of opinions about Brandon's works and the Cosmere. I'm Eric, and joining me today is Alyx.
Oh, I didn't realize I was first.
I literally pasted the overlay in.
You'd think that I'm like paying attention to where I am on that. Like I looked at it and it didn't register
for the last half hour.
Listen, we're doing things. Hi, everybody. I'm Feather. I think I already said that.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be here. I love shipping. Thank you.
Also joining us is Matt.
Hey, I'm Comatose, aka Rashendi Trash from the forums and Discord.
You are Rashendi Trash. You have kept that in there for a long time.
Well, as christened on this show, I think it was the anniversary live stream ship it, or the anniversary.
It might have been that one. Yeah.
Ship it or rip.
Yeah.
I had to rip Rashendi.
Brutal.
And
brutal.
Unjustly was given the point over Shannon, who 100% deserved the point for shipping them. But
damn,
I've spent the Rashendi Trash in my name is atonement for
having to rip it.
Very good.
Successfully ripping them.
Very good. Also joining us is Grace.
Hey, I'm Gator Girl.
It's been a while.
Yeah, I'm excited to be back.
Hell yeah. And last but certainly not least, we have Shannon.
Hi, I'm Gray, and I definitely did deserve that Rashendi point. I don't remember who is the judge, but I have a lot of like remembered losses that I'm like, I shouldn't have lost that point from previous Ship It or Rip It games. Oh, I remember. I'm into this stuff.
And my username is deadweight because I'm complete deadweight in this game. Please carry me. But
we're happy you're here.
Yeah. I'm present. So
this is the OG Ship It or Rip
it is.
cast.
It is. We were hoping to get Katie, but the scheduling just didn't work. So.
Do we have a different crew first? Because this is our third one. I don't know where the second episode crew was.
I think Ben and Ian have both done it, right?
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
I know Ben was in one.
It's a fun game. Everybody should play it.
Yeah.
So play it.
We are doing a game show today. We are playing Ship It or Rip It. We are going to have one person be the judge, and then we're going to have two teams. One who's going to ship a pair of characters, and the other that is going to rip that pair of characters. The judge decides who gets the point. We have a random number generator and a big list of characters. There's 133 characters updated through Tress of the Emerald Sea. We got Lost Metal, we got Tress in there, and we removed some people who too minor of characters. Yeah.
So this will be full Cosmere spoilers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So this is that is what we're doing. Okay, let me
just like quick disclaimer for anybody who's maybe not in on fandom lingo. Ship referring to relationship, like usually a romantic pairing is what we're arguing for or against between our random characters.
Right.
Sometimes we need to get creative though with romantic pairing and what.
Yeah.
Why these two characters are really soulmates actually.
Yeah, Renarin and Ashert.
You guys shipped Renarin with Ashert Marn, and I was the judge.
And you had
and
to
we
go.
got you. And you were gotten.
You did. I gave the point to it. It was really well argued.
I like it. All right, everyone. Our first team. I'm the judge. I'm starting. So, these teams have a fair shot when I'm judging because I'm not weighing someone down. And our ship team is going to be Alyx Matt. And our rip team is going to be Shannon Grace. And who do we have for our first pairing? We're going to have MeLaan.
Oh, this will be fun.
And Charlie from Tress of the Emerald Sea.
Okay.
All right. Who's Yeah, MeLaan and Charlie. What do you got?
The pro side should go first.
Yeah,
because
side goes first.
I'm thinking.
I don't know if
You're
they have
thinking?
to.
Okay.
But, yeah.
No, I'm already shipping this, and I have to be on the side.
This is the hard part every time. It's so easy to ship.
So easy to ship. Yeah.
It's so emotionally difficult to rip things because you always see the potential. You never want to trash it.
Okay.
But
So
we're gonna.
I'll start, Alyx, if you're thinking. So a big part of Charlie's arc is about like transformation and becoming like kind of shedding his disguise, which is his being the son of the Duke. That's not actually who he is inside, even though it's the position he was born into. And I think as a Kandra, MeLaan would really understand that. Also, we know that she is a world hopper. So this could totally happen. And Lumar is a planet that would be very fun to explore. I think she would enjoy visiting. And also, Charlie is turned into a rat for a bit, so he has experience literally shape-shifting as well. So they have some commonalities there.
I like that too much.
Pretty good.
Pro argument.
Here's my counter argument. So there might be maybe some initial interest, but I think like they wouldn't really work. And here's why. So Charlie, throughout Tress, has like a very tumultuous home life. Like, you know, his father literally sends him off to die and like gets a replacement son, and that's like a lot of like trauma regarding his family life. And you know, one of the things is like Tress is a very stable character and she's a very committed character, and I think those are things that Charlie is very attracted to. Whereas we know with MeLaan, she like has some issues committing, like we see with Wayne. You know, she breaks up with him because she's a human and she doesn't see it working long term, even though like she admits that she really likes him. So I think that's a relationship where if they do get together, it would actually be very, very detrimental for Charlie's mental health in the long term, because MeLaan, you know, would be scared of that commitment and then leave. And then I think Charlie needs someone in his life who is very like supportive and loving and who is very stable and to be in a relationship.
And if I can add on to that, like I think looking at the attraction MeLaan had to Wayne at first, like I think it was the fact that they weren't taking it too seriously. Charlie is not the kind of person who wouldn't, you know, he would take it seriously, and he would be immediately from the get-go, he would take it like a really serious, you know, he wants to be in it for the long haul. And MeLaan, I think, would be scared by that. And I think like she is compassionate enough that she wouldn't try to initiate something with Charlie, knowing that about him. I think like she wouldn't go for it.
Ooh, that's a really good point. I gotta get a good counter argument to try to swing us back. So I'll say, I think, well, at the start, I think that MeLaan has a sort of adventurous spirit that Charlie, I think, would be really interested in. I think he's a little bit of a quieter character who's maybe drawn to sort of like stronger female leads. And even though MeLaan isn't necessarily like a protagonist in her story, I think she has that sort of like whirlwind fun energy that Charlie would be really attracted to. But I think also there's something in them sort of pushing beyond the bounds of what they were meant to be, maybe without fully resenting who that used to be. Like, MeLaan is looking to be more than just a Kandra. You know, she doesn't just want to do the things that the Kandra are supposed to do and do it Harmony's way all the time. Like, she wants to go have her own adventures and see things. And I think seeing someone who's really comfortable with herself and has a little bit more of a mature relationship with the sort of pressures of her past and responsibility could be something good for Charlie, who, like Matt was saying, sort of like got put in this box of being the Duke's son and he didn't really fit. And I think actually the sort of like shared shape-shifting experience, like Charlie's, I think, was a very traumatic experience to be in a body that was different from his own. And I think maybe someone who does that sort of thing really naturally could actually empathize with it in a way that perhaps another human character couldn't, and help him sort of process some of that like body transformation trauma that he's been through. So there's my counter argument for why we should go back together.
And can I respond quick to a couple of the Grace and Shannon points?
Okay.
Just really quick. I'm just going to say, to the point about MeLaan maybe hurting Charlie because, you know, she's so flighty and like he needs a stable relationship. I think a relationship's permanence or lack thereof is not a sign of how good a ship it is. An impermanent relationship can still be really compelling and fun. And B, you know, Charlie and Tress are embracing that pirate lifestyle. They could do a poly experiment with MeLaan, and
they all have
MeLaan would be really up for that. And then Charlie would still have his stable like partner that he needs to kind of help process some of his trauma, but also has, you know, someone to experiment with. So.
But would Charlie even be interested in that more unstable relationship? Like, we see he was so committed to Tress that he was willing to like torch his chances with these other women and not even entertain the thought of getting to know them better because he wanted to be able to come back to Tress and be with her. I think everything we have seen from Charlie shows that he is like a serious monogamist and would not be interested in experimenting with the poly lifestyle.
Or an impermanent one. Going into it knowing that it's impermanent or going to be temporary, I think would not appeal to him. Even if, like, and I think MeLaan would be straight with him from the get-go. That this, like, you know, if she's going to be into it, she's not going to. She doesn't want this to be a permanent, forever love, and I think that would be a turnoff for Charlie.
Guys, this is really hard for me to judge. Okay, like this is.
You got to call it at some point, Eric.
Yep. Are you going to call it?
I think I got.
I can do another point. Okay.
Oh, did you have more, Shannon?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I was about to like reach around to the way of saying I think I've rested my case.
Yeah. I think it's both a good ship and a bad ship for all these reasons. This is so tricky. I think
Can I throw one tiny thing out there real quick?
All right.
This doesn't have to be an argument. I just need to say it because I think MeLaan deserves a sweet boy rebound after the nastiness of Wayne, because Wayne's a nasty character. She deserves a sweet boy. Thank you.
I think shipping something because MeLaan deserves something nice is...
Exactly. Thank you. All right, continue.
Lots of nice boys out there. It doesn't have to be Charlie.
My heart says rip. Sorry, guys.
All right.
Yeah, Charlie is my boy. I was like, I have to win this.
No, Grace with the character.
All right. The judge is Alyx. Shipping is Grace and I. And ripping is Shannon and Matt. And all right, we have Shallan.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy. Okay.
And Sadeas.
I'm not gonna rest on our laurels here. I'm not gonna count eggs just yet.
Alyx, I want to paint you a picture. Okay, Grace? Do you want to go first? Go for it.
I'll go. But if you've got something,
no, Grace, by all means.
Okay, so I think Sadeas, like, if he got to know Shallan, would be really deeply attracted to her. Because, like, from we've seen with Eli, you know, she's a woman that is not afraid to buck society standards in terms of, like, you know, sitting at the men's table and eating men's food and having a symmetrical name. And she's also kind of like this spy master. Like, she does have, like, a spy network. And I think that Sadeas, if he got to know Shallan, would be very attracted to a lot of those same traits.
I want to paint you a picture, Alyx. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let's imagine at the end of Words of Radiance that Adolin doesn't kill Sadeas, but Sadeas kills Adolin. Okay, so we're in an alternate timeline, and this sets Shallan down an even darker path. Her personality is splintering more, and she does join the Ghostbloods. And I think in this situation, Shallan, she's evil Shallan now, and so she needs she's going to use Sadeas to advance her goals. And I think Sadeas would be attracted to Shallan for all of these reasons. And Shallan would be into Sadeas because it's advancing her overall goals of the Ghostbloods who want control of Urithiru. And so I think it works from both Sadeas and evil Shallan's perspective.
I do have a counter.
Okay. All right.
I'm sure there's a few.
There's been some chatter. There's been some side commentary in the text chat about whether or not this is a legal move that has been deployed by the ship team. It's sustained.
I'm just saying you evaluate it based on the ship, not on the fact that Shallan happens to be a ghost blood.
I'm just saying it's a character. Like I'm painting a picture.
No,
here.
I think Eric is playing the game correctly. Yeah. Catering to the judge is how we win.
Just
games.
The ghost blood Shallan is not the primary part of this. That is like part of the.
I just like it's a rationalization. I'm just saying that like painting a picture for a story is how you ship Renarin and Ashramar.
That's
no.
I was going to say that's exactly how we got there.
That's exactly how you do it.
Renarin and Ashramar.
I have a very good level of Skybreaker impartiality as a judge. Like, I would never let my own personal
Kelsey or anyone rip.
Okay. Anyway, rip team, please. Rip.
I get to go. Thanks.
Yes, please.
Okay. Here's the thing. I was already thinking about. You have to think about why this works to think about why it doesn't. The only way I can see this working is a sort of a devolution arc for Shallan. Like this is if this ship happens, it's because something has gone totally wrong for Shallan. And that can work. That can make a valid ship as like, you know my thoughts on shipping. It doesn't have to be a healthy ship. My only thing is I think this specific devolution arc where she ends up in Sadeas in any form is a really boring one. I do not think that Sadeas feeds into her worst impulses in any way. I don't even think he touches what makes her, So like but the way I see this happening is kind of the worst of all worlds, not in like obviously I don't think there's a world in which this is a healthy ship where they both grow and become better people together or like that. But also I don't see this working in a devolution spiral arc. Our lives are falling apart and we're like so awful for each other, but it's like crunchy and awful and like, like compelling train crash kind of way. I don't think it's even that. I think this is just the most milquetoast, middle of the line. The things that make Shallan click or that make her spiral are not even close to the things that like Sadeas is focused on. He is purely like he wants to play games with the politics and of Alethkar. That's not what she's into. She likes her little spy games. He's playing like politics. Let me get into the Colin's business. Like let me be the fly in their ointment. And he's a small-minded. He's got like only thinking about the kingdom of Alethkar. Shallan is playing 4D chess. She's playing 5D chess. She wants to be into the interstellar Cosmere games. She wants to be doing that kind of thing. And I feel like Sadeas wouldn't even be an interesting sort of propeller for her issues. Like if we're going to go ham on how awful and crunchy a ship can be, this isn't even touching that. And that's what I think. I think middle of the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree, Shannon. And I think also like it kind of plays into like Sadeas has like a controlling side, and yes, him and Isla are more like equal partners, but I don't think he'd come into a relationship with Shallan like that, because you see him being very dismissive of most other people other than Isla. And so I think it would, if there's a regression arc, it would be more back to like timid Shallan, like she was in her father's house. And it just feels like kind of a win we don't need to give the patriarchy, right? Like, like I think that's a little like tired, and like she's done that arc already. So yeah, I don't really see it. And I think, you know, there's really beautiful poetry that Adolin kills Sadeas and Shallan kills Isla, or Radiant kills Isla, however you want to put that. And yeah, bringing Sadeas back and forcing this relationship would kind of mess with all that fun juice we already have.
Hear me out. So we're talking all about, you know, Shallan and her spiraling, but I see this as like this really toxic, like almost game of like cat and mouse, where they're sort of attracted to each other and trying to use each other, and it doesn't always work. So Sadeas wants to mess with the Kholins, and with Shallan's arc, when she arrives on the Shattered Plains, her betrothal to Adolin, her time under Jasnah is very close to the Kholins. But Shallan is also interested in Amaram because of what the Ghostbloods ask her to do in stealing from him. So I see a world in which these two people sort of collide in like they're trying to use each other. It's not a healthy relationship where they're, you know, in love. They're these two people who both sort of think, you know, from Sadeas' side, he thinks, you know, Shallan is like, I don't really respect her. She's close to Kholins. Like, I can use her to get in with them, get information, sabotage them. Whereas with Shallan's side, she's like, okay, like I'm playing all these games, spy games. Like I can get in with Sadeas. Hold on. I think I'm conflating Sadeas and Amaram here.
Well, Amaram was under Sadeas.
Take your time.
But so.
Yeah, he's a part of Sadeas's core.
Yeah.
So I think there is a world in which like getting close in with Sadeas and getting his information would be very useful to Shallan, in that like she thinks it will advance her with the Ghostbloods. But then like once they are close and once they are playing this mind games, there is this like very unexpected level of attraction between them. Where like Shallan is like, I know this person is bad for me, and I know this person is like controlling and doesn't have my best interests at heart. Like she's still in this very unhealthy spiraling sort of way, puts herself in this toxic situation. Whereas with Sadeas, it's like, okay, sure, I don't really respect her, but like, you know, she's kind of you know, a spy. She's kind of like this, you know, sort of strong woman who like my wife that I'm attracted to. And so that's sort of where that relationship comes. And it's the sort of relationship that will end with like one of them stabbing the other person in the back when they're like in bed with their guard down. But I think that's what makes it so fun, is, you know, the toxicity ending with that explosive, you know, murder, I think is where the ship would go.
And I think with Sadeas, there's a possibility that his being small-minded in scope is changed by Shallan, and he actually changes to take a more expansive view of maybe dominating the Cosmere rather than just the Shattered Plains and Alefkar. And so like it's not just pure like he's controlling her. She's actually changing him to think bigger, and so that's why he keeps her around more. So that's why it's going to be a more long-term thing, and then they eventually kill each other.
Okay. Quick final thoughts from the Rip side.
I just don't think Sadeas is capable of doing a cat and mouse. The man got skunked by Adolin, who is not exactly the height of, those kind of games. You know what you need for a good cat and mouse. Let's try and one up the other. You need panache. You need theatricality. You need Riz. Sadeas does not have it.
Sadeas, not Riz.
He would be left in the dust by Shallan so fast. It would not be like a fun game of like master. Who's the master here? Who's the prey? You can't do a cat and mouse game when someone's so sad like this.
But that's why it's equal. Matt's saying, the patriarchy, we already did that. But Shallan being a step ahead of him at every step of the point is how this ship dismantles the patriarchy. Because even though he underestimates her, she's the one with the mind who is in control.
Oh, I think my argument stands for itself, and I'll let Matt go.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly the point, though. He underestimates her. So how does this go? Either she retreats because it's like her father's situation, and then we have that again, or she's playing on another level and he's underestimating her, so you still don't have that cat and mouse because he doesn't realize she's playing. He thinks she's just this silly girl. And I'll also say that I don't think part of the point of Sadeas's character is that he doesn't really change. Like, he is who he is. He is who he has been since he was a youth with Dalinar and Gavilar. And even though Dalinar is changing and Dalinar is saying, there are bigger things we need to worry about. And Sadeas is just caught in his princely intrigues. He never moves on from that. So
all right,
where I'll rest.
I will call it here. But I think moving towards this has to be a toxic, crunchy, devolving ship is the way to go. But I'm gonna give it to the Rip team. I think they made a really good case that there's not quite enough the nasty foils to really exacerbate each other's issues to go that route all the way. Also, a win we can't give the patriarchy is a
good line.
It's gonna stick with me forever. So.
That's a win we can't.
I absolutely was conflating Amaram and Sadeas when I was thinking through my arguments. I was thinking Shallan and Amaram, not Shallan and Sadeas.
Yeah. Well, when you were saying that, Grace, actually, I think what you guys were arguing could work better with Amaram instead.
Yeah, to be honest,
That's what I was. That's what I was like. I already committed to this. I'm just going to segue in. I realized
Amaram is no brace, but he has more than Sadeas. So.
Yeah. Well, also with Amaram, you have the juice of his history with Jasnah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That instantly gives it and also the juice with Allriane and with Galladon. There's just
Amaram just has more angles.
Yeah, I was
not enough Riz. You're right.
I think we were working from a disadvantage with the ship. I think best shot.
I think we did pretty good considering who this was.
It was it was strong out the gate.
It was a great play. It was a great argument, Eric.
Good play. An excellent judgment bringing Ghostblood Shallan in.
Yeah.
Okay, now we have Judge Matt. Shipping is Eric Shannon. Ripping is Grace Alyx. And who do we have here? So we have...
I think Grace and Alyx are very formidable.
I absolutely agree.
I think everybody on this call is formidable. Even Eric, who is selling himself short.
Look, I think that's going to be my one good argument in this show.
We'll see. Find out. We'll see how this is going to turn around.
Right, we're going to have Khriss Ranette.
And we're ripping that, Alyx.
We're ripping Khriss Ranette. Okay. All right. Sure.
All right. What do you think here?
All right. Do I want to? I have some initial thoughts.
I think ships.
I do not think that has to be the case, Matt. I think anyone can.
I like it when the pros start.
Okay. All right.
Go for it then. If you,
Khriss, it's kind of It's like you're putting forward the thing to get like ripped down.
Yeah, okay. Khriss wants to know how the world works, how the Cosmere works, right? The mechanics of all these things. Ranette is basically a mechanic, just of weaponry. And so I think that there is a natural synergy between these two, okay, where they both want to discover new things. Khriss is more a discoverer rather than a creator, but I think her being with someone who has that creative energy to build and construct things would really fascinate her. And I think Ranette would be interested in more mechanics. And so I think that this just works really great together, that they would have they're not the same, but there's a lot of synergy between these two.
I actually like how not scholarly Ranette is, because I think that's something Brandon does a lot, is like women are scholarly, women are, you know, the spheres of the mind, the sphere of learning. But I really appreciate that Ranette is more of a go-getter. And I think that's sort of the element that her and Khriss would meet. Neither of these are the kind of learners, the kind of people who sit around and let things happen. They are the kind who go and find things out themselves. They do things themselves. They're doers. And I think there would be a natural spark there. But like when they meet, I think this would be more of either the kind of thing where they instantly get along, or all it takes is like one scenario in the heat of battle or like in a crisis. And then all of a sudden they would realize, oh yeah, that she has it. She has what I have.
Okay, but you guys talk about them both being go-getters, both of them being interested in knowledge. But what I am seeing is like they're both kind of workaholics. You know, they're both going to be the ones who are in the lab doing research late at night without someone there to pull them out and to say, like, no, like it's time for us to go on vacation to the southern continent and not interview people about medallions all day and just have some time relaxing in like hot springs or something. I think that like this isn't a scenario where I think both of them could very easily be more focused on their work and on their research than on their relationship, and they would put the other person sort of in the back seat. And I don't think that's, you know, a way to build a relationship. And I think that's where the problem would lie.
I will also say, I think Grace is making very good points about the two of them really not being compatible. But I also think this is a situation in which you sort of have two big personalities that would clash. You know, I think Khriss is very, you know, she's the Duchess. She kind of has this very dramatic presence when she's on screen, and she spends her time with someone like Nash, who's much quieter. He's very effective, but he's not going to like sort of get in the way and clash with her. I think Ranette is also sort of very strong-willed, very headstrong, and I think they would end up sort of butting heads and both sort of wanting to a little bit be in charge of what's going on and what they're going to do. And I'll also say is that we know how much Khriss loves to travel and see the Cosmere and explore. And I think I'm remembering this correctly, but isn't there a whole thing in The Lost Metal about how like Ranette went on her honeymoon and all she could think about was how sick she was of being in a place that wasn't home and just wanted to get back to her workshop? Like they went on this like big sightseeing tour to the Malwish, and she was like, I didn't like it that much. Vacation kind of sucked. I just want to be back home and do my tool stuff. Like, I don't think they have enough similar interests to be able to have a life together in a way that either of them would want.
I disagree with everything you said. So one, look, if they're both workaholics, like I think if you're a workaholic, with someone who's not a workaholic, and then there's a mismatch of expectations in the relationship, right? If you're both on the same page, it's like, yeah, we're workaholics. Our career is extremely important to us. And then they understand that, and there's not that, mismatch of expectations. And so that doesn't necessarily need to be a problem. And secondly, Ranette would understand that Khriss's workshop is the whole Cosmere, and where she needs to work is everywhere. Whereas Khriss would understand, oh, your work is here at this workshop. And so I think they would actually understand maybe initially that would be a bit problematic, but once they talk,
find their rhythm.
Find their rhythm. And then they're like, oh yeah, we are both workaholics, and now I see that our labs are just different places.
And I also have a number of responses.
Excellent.
I also think it can work. It is, in some ways, we think of it as not ideal, but there are plenty of healthy, very functional relationships where one partner travels a lot, and it happens.
True.
My immediate thought was like, I don't enjoy the thought of like there always being like there has to be a person in the relationship who's telling the other person to stop. And I don't see that either of them is the type to ignore another relationship. Like especially Ranette, we know this is something that she wants. This is me speaking out of ignorance of Khriss. I haven't read White Sand.
She doesn't. She was married, but. Or engaged, right? She was engaged. I think
it's totally fair and possible for there to be relationships where they're both fully into their own thing and to carve out time for themselves. It doesn't have to be, we have to be around each other 24/7 at every waking moment. Like, I think they're the type who love their work. And I think it makes a lot of sense for them to understand other people loving their work too. The mismatch of ideas and in real life, we have certain mismatches where there are jobs that take a lot of one partner's time, but not another one. And there are problems there. Like if someone works in healthcare, they can have long shifts, they're away, and all of a sudden they're away for even it might feel like they're away for days at a time. So it's hard to carve out that moments with your partner. But I think if they're both into that kind of lifestyle, they would both know we are into our work, we love it and we're full charge ahead when we're into our work, and then when it's time for the relationship, it's time for the relationship. We're on that too. So I don't think that that's even a problem. Big personalities create sparks, and so even if they're both two big personalities, they're different spheres. I don't see them actually clashing in a way that matters because Ranette likes to get stuff prepared and hand things off to the people that she loves in order to prepare them for their trip and and their business.
Very true.
I don't actually see her stepping on any toes when it comes to Khriss wanting to lead her own thing. Here's my part. I'm gonna get everything ready for when you go, baby. And then she hands things off to onto Khriss. I think this is a very natural shifting the baton of this is my sphere. I'm going to take care of you, and then pass it on to the next one.
There would be sparks because Ranette likes making sparks because guns and gunpowder. Boom. Easy.
See, I think what I would say is I actually don't think they're the kind of clashing personalities that would make sparks is my thing. I think I don't think it would work because I think they're both sort of big personalities that wouldn't be able to sort of get through to each other. Ranette's prickly. She doesn't open up to people. She wants to do her own thing. She's not really the sort of person who connects with other people easily. And I think someone who's sort of dramatic and sort of a strong, very confident persona is, they're going to meet, they're not going to connect to each other at all. And I think they just sort of bounce off and aren't able to get to a point where either one of them could get deeper or learn more about the other person in the sort of vulnerable way that you need for an actual emotional connection. I think part of what sort of Wayne finally managed to do when he stopped being obnoxious to Ranette is he had a little bit of persistence that once it wasn't an unwelcome persistence, he could kind of get in there and sort of just be a friend to Ranette in a way that like got through her shell. I think Khriss has too much to do. She's looking for big, interesting people. She's a big, interesting personality herself. If she meets a grumpy mechanic, like, why is she going to dig in there? She's got better things to do. I think they'd bounce off and move on, and there really wouldn't be anything that would draw them together to establish a relationship in the first place.
Well, you're just like acting as though in this universe there's no such thing as a meet cute. Like it's sort of like they would never meet, therefore they would never have a relationship. Like, come on. In this we gotta dream a little. Like
I don't see all Ranette has to do that would break the ice between these two.
That's that's the first thing I said was like, in moment of crisis, show their worth. It's sort of that's a meet cute in a world like this.
Be like, hey, you're awesome. Hey, Matt you're pretty cool too.
I think I'm ready to call it, unless someone has a burning point left to make.
No.
What you got, Matt?
I ship it, man.
Hell yeah.
I ship it. It's great.
I'm on the board. Yeah, Shannon's in the lead with 3.
Rip made a valiant effort.
I thought their arguments were really good.
I did think their arguments were really good. Yeah.
I was like, damn it.
I think the most convincing is that they're just kind of like similar in the wrong ways to create chemistry. Yeah. Like they would just be like buds. But
I can see them being work buds, like colleagues
for sure.
who like, but maybe, like warmth could grow, but at the same time, I think like it would take a very specific firefight or something like, I'm imagining.
Like, there's a lot of cool, like the synergy of like them both being kind of like practical scientists in a way and like magic guns.
That was one where I think Rip definitely opened with a disadvantage though.
Also, like, I did fact check something Alyx said.
Listen, I know I was wrong about it. I found that out later and I was hoping nobody was going to call me. Listen, while you guys are doing your opening arguments, I was on the...
I don't know. You can't say things you know are wrong. I don't remember enough of these things.
I was looking for the scene because I thought I remembered it and I thought I had found it. And then I went and read it closer and it didn't actually say the thing that I thought it said.
Like her...
Because she grudgingly admits
her begrudging. Yeah, she actually did like traveling a little bit.
Oh, see, easy peasy.
Oh.
Nailed it.
I was gonna bring it up. I misremembered. I tried to check my source. Whatever.
You were so convincing in what you said.
Well, I just don't know better. Yeah.
All right, guys. Our next judge is Lady Grace, and the ship team is Shannon Matt. The OG power ship or rip team, I think. And the rip is Alyx Eric. And the characters are Wayne and Ruin / Ati.
Oh no.
Making me ship Wayne.
I know, making me ship Wayne. Now I have to think about things in a positive light.
I did not doctor anything. The teams are randomly generated and the pairings are randomly generated, and I randomly generated them separately. So yeah, that's just how it goes. I did find it amusing.
The 2 Wayne haters gotta ship him.
Hey, I don't like Wayne either. Don't leave me out of the Wayne.
Oh, yeah.
But you get to be on the rip team.
Thanks for all the dislikes, guys. I'm bringing that up. This is really great. Boom. Hell yeah.
There are strong opinions about Wayne in the room. This does not represent the official opinions of 17th Shard.
You have an official opinion?
No official opinion.
We do not.
Nice.
There are lots of Wayne lovers on staff. I gotta think about who Ruin is.
Okay, I'll start.
Okay.
So I was going to bring this up eventually. First off, it's Pride Month, and we know Wayne is not great to women. How do we address both those things? We make him gay. And guess what? his like fascination with wax, like he's already partway there, and him and MeLaan have been like experimenting, right? So
and she experiments with gender. He's fine with it. He's great with it.
And Wayne also is like
he plays
around with fluidity a bit in his disguises too.
Mm-hmm.
Ahti, I think, like Ahti and Laras, Ruin and Preservation, like that's obviously a love story as old as time. So
everyone, yeah.
Tragic cross star love.
It's something that has not been denied by Brandon, and
that's how we confirm theories these days.
Yeah.
Brandon didn't say no.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's some good fanfic out there on it. Anyway, but so Wayne and Ahti. So what do we know about Ahti? We know he was a kind and gentle man before
generous, not gentle.
Generous and gentle.
Just to be clear.
Okay. He was kind. And before Ruin started taking him over. And so I think his experience of being corrupted with something might help Wayne start to recognize some of his flaws and realize how he started out as this kind of like plucky kid and then slowly became corrupted by some of these problematic behaviors. And I think that's one of the things that's really missing from the Lost Metal to make Wayne work more as a character, is because Wax and Wayne had to be like, we're getting the band back together. We never got a really good scene where Wax kind of holds Wayne accountable. And yeah, I think Ahti could do that for Wayne, even not intentionally, just by sharing his experiences. And Wayne can realize, man, like, I've been ruining things too. And Wayne does beat himself up about, wrecking everything. But I think with Ahti's help, they can kind of learn together, get back to who they really are, and then they can be gay and in love.
I have been struck over the head with the phrase, I ruin things too. So I'm going to let the opposition go. I need to sit with that.
See, I think my problem with the idea of this being a good ship premise is I think when we start the books with Wayne, he's already a pretty ruinous person. I mean, like, he clutches on his gold in a way that, he can just sort of be destructive and isn't, he's the kind of person who breaks stuff and doesn't really think about it. And I think, therefore, any kind of connection with an entity like Ruin is not going to push him in an interesting direction. I think that's going to be stagnation. We're going to see a Wayne who just sort of keeps being destructive and not, he doesn't have anything in that relationship that's pushing him towards something better or something more well-rounded in the way that I think we get with like the tempering influence of his sort of partnership with Wax, or even I think that the way that really his dynamic with Harmony at the end of Lost Metal is compelling, because we want to see Wayne sort of grow and develop as a person and become better than his worst impulses. And I think Wayne falling in with Ruin is just like, well, the worst impulses are in line with what's going on here, and it's just going to stay that way. And I don't think that makes for an interesting character arc, to just stay the same and still be ruinous the whole time.
It's not an interesting character arc. And also, Wayne wouldn't be attracted to that anyway. Like, that destructive tendency is where he goes, right? But he doesn't like that, like there's a lot of self-loathing. And so I don't think Wayne would be attracted to a god of destruction, really, because he wants to get away from that, or he just wants to destroy himself, really. And so the ship would never last, even if they did have something in common of those destructive tendencies. This would just quickly lead to Wayne destroying himself until, Ruin uses him for some destructive ends, and then Wayne's just like, yeah, I am terrible, and then he just then he ends things, and so it could never work. And it's not an interesting character arc.
I do think that this would not be a permanent, again, like I'll use the phrase again, like forever love. I do think this would be, I think the way this shakes out is sort of like a temporary short term, but no less real for what it is kind of situation. For one, Ruin is part of Harmony. Whatever that Harmony and Wayne had at the end, like you can't use Harmony as an example of clicking with Wayne in any way without saying, well, Ruin's there too, because he is. I think Wayne seeing himself in Ruin, I think it would be like a gradual sort of slowly building a friendship and then realizing how much he has in common with AT, like of, you're trouble when you didn't want to be, when you didn't intend to be, but here you are making trouble, like, and in the process of like being a support for Ruin and, and trying to convince him that he can change and that this isn't who he is, I think he would fail. But I think that's what Wayne might try. I think in telling Ruin this and trying to be that support, he would realize this is the kind of thing he can't do. He can't do for himself. He's never been able to say these words to himself before. And I think this would be the kind of sad relationship where there's real love, but in the end, when they realize it can't work, Wayne still realized AT was showing him part of himself. Like he was like, I am like Ruin, aren't I? I think it's a sad relationship. I don't think this ends in love and happiness, but I think this is just one of those classic tragic romances.
I can agree, tragic. I can't think love or passion is on that list of there.
Passion doesn't need to be there. This is the kind of thing. It's like
there's no spark here.
I'm asexual. There might not be there might not be passion ever, but there might be love.
I don't think Wayne would love that at all.
See, I think if we start to, because my first approach to this was very much like the Ruin shard as a concept, but I think if we want to get into like the vessel motivations of AT as a person, I think what we see from his time with Ruin is he has this desire to be seen as good. The way that he talks to like Vin in particular is like, no, I'm the kindly shopkeeper who's closing up. At the end of the day, this isn't a bad thing. This destruction isn't a terrible evil thing that you need to hate. It's good. I'm doing a good thing. It's inevitable. It's just change. And I think like AT is so almost like desperate for a validation on that front. And I think Wayne is the sort of person who just won't give it to him. I think Wayne sees something like that and goes like, no, mate, you're a bad guy. Like, whatever. Destruction's bad. I'm not going to listen to this.
He doesn't like the destruction.
Yeah, that vulnerable craving to be understood. Like Wayne's just not the person who's ever going to empathize with the struggle of being a god of destruction. He's gonna be like, no, that's a bad thing you're doing. Whatever. I'm not interested in your sob story, AT.
All right, I'm calling it.
Okay.
I'm giving this to the cons. I think the pros relied a little too much on a characterization of Wayne that is just like, I am a bad person and I ruin things, and I don't think that was super compelling to me.
Based on my understanding of The Lost Metal and not having reread Era 2, I think I was pretty on the money, but I understand.
I'm on the board finally, so I'll take it.
On the board. This
is my first point.
I think I'll be honest, I think Matt's initial Auntie would show Wayne that he's ruining things was a little weak for me and kind of kind of soured my pro.
Wow, fair. That's fair. Wow, that's fair.
It was a good effort, guys.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now it's faded from my mind.
Immediately.
I had something in response to what Alyx was saying at the end there, but I don't think it would have changed anything.
High five, Alyx.
Rishendi has reasserted itself, the correct course of nature.
Yeah.
All right. Our next judge is Shannon. Ships are Alyx Grace. And our rip is Matt Eric. We have... Oh, I'm so sorry, Matt. We have Allriane and Rushu. Just Matt's physically in pain. I'm so sorry, Matt.
It's garbage. Hate it.
worst idea for a ship you've ever heard. Yeah.
The pain.
I mean, I can come out with an opening statement if we're all right.
Please do.
I mean, I think this ship has just an obvious cuteness when you think about these two together. Like, there's just kind of an adorable dynamic that comes together of Allriane obviously is a very happy, bubbly, friendly person who gloms onto people even if they're maybe not paying attention to her. She like decides that we're going to be friends and then we're going to be friends. And I think Rushu has this sort of, she's also a little bit, I don't want to say oblivious. I love Rushu as a character. Everything I'm saying is with extreme fondness, but I think like she gets a little bit distracted and needs somebody to like pull her out to do a fun thing because she's gotten caught up in some little scholarship project. And, you know, I think we have like Rushu who joined the Ardentia because she just wanted to study and didn't want to deal with like weird male attention all the time. I just think they would have like such cute little girlfriend moments of like Allriane is taking them both shopping and Rushu is like happily babbling about whatever academic project she's working on, and Allriane's like, I love this, babe. I don't understand what you're saying right now, but I love hearing you talk about it because you're so passionate about it. And they just be the most adorable. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to sort of reiterate, you know, we know Rushu's not into men, doesn't like male attention. We don't know, like, she might like women's attention. That's not ever said. And also, I think Rushu kind of has a tendency to get lost in her work and not always understand people. Like, she doesn't always understand, you know, sort of the nuances and implications in people when people say things, when they're not being direct to her. And I think that's an area where Allriane really shines. She understands people and their emotions very well. And I think that they're very complementary in that way. Whereas Allriane would be able to listen to the people around them and sort of understand, you know, sort of what they're saying beneath the words, some of the things that Rushu maybe misses in conversations, and would be able to sort of explain that to her and sort of help, sort of be the one to help navigate social situations where Rushu is maybe less confident. And I think that they're like really compatible in that way, and that they complement each other really well.
So I think that they're not super well suited because, so first off, we know Allriane has this interest in fashion. She has like a real passion for it. And you can see in the books, even her choice of partner, you'll notice, while her and Breeze are very different, Breeze is also a very stylish person. So you can see how that interest of Allriane's is obviously a very key one. And for Rushu, I would say she joined the Ardentia. Escaping male attention is the rumor, but it also seems kind of like she was escaping norms of femininity. She doesn't really show an interest in how she presents herself. She just wants to learn, and she's almost trying to escape from her beauty. So I think there'd be kind of a lack of understanding between the two of them, where Allriane is kind of like doing her makeover thing like she did to Vin, and Rushu not really being here for it because that's not really the right avenue for Rushu. With Vin, it was kind of an arc about her reclaiming her femininity and becoming and having a more positive relationship with it, because she had always been, kind of gravitating to be more boyish to avoid weakness. But with Rushu, I think it would be more trying to return Rushu to a space she very much does not want to be and has no interest in being. I also think that Rushu is somewhat oblivious, aloof. She seems to gravitate towards people and work with people who are like very obviously brilliant and intelligent, who she can converse with. And I honestly think she would not see through Allriane's act enough to realize how interesting Allriane is. I think she'd be somewhat dismissive towards her and would never break through the surface. I think she's capable of doing that, but I don't think there would be reasons for her to do that. So I just don't think it's a good match. And the faults in it are more problematic, I think, for the characters, like self-actualization and their arcs. So I don't think it would work also either in a toxic way, really. They're also both really wholesome characters. So any way you slice it, I just don't think it works.
Matt, you basically said most of what I wanted to say, so good job, and better than I was going to say it. So that works great for me. I think they could be friends, right? I could totally see that, but I don't partners. I just can't see that for all the reasons Matt said. I don't think Rushu could get under that surface, and I don't think Rushu would really get Allriane. I could see a situation where Allriane gets very fascinated with Rushu and maybe develops a crush potentially, but indeed Rushu doesn't really have that style aspect. So I just don't think there's just that mismatch that I don't think is an opposites attract type thing.
I think Rushu and Allriane becoming interesting in each other is just a matter of circumstances, though. Maybe Rushu was working on a fabrial related to replicating the metallic arts and ends up interviewing Allriane about her experiences, and they end up working closely together. And in asking Allriane about her experiences with rioting, and Allriane starts to talk about the way that she needs to understand people's emotions and see through them, and I think that's sort of where their walls start to break down, and they start to sort of see each other more and develop that deeper connection. It doesn't always have to be an instant thing, and I think this actually could be a really compelling arc of these are the two people, these are the two people with different interests, but then through circumstances end up talking to each other and learning more about sort of their areas of expertise and end up developing that deeper connection in that way.
Yeah, one of the things I really find fun about Allriane is that she's this sort of person who you're an interesting person, we're friends now. And I think Rushu would initially be a little bit oblivious to why Allriane is hanging out with her all the time, but would eventually catch on. I love the vibe of Rushu is just a little bit too smart for her own good and doesn't always catch on to things that maybe are a little more obvious because she's lost in the high-end details sort of a thing. But I think there's just so much potential for the high femme power couple that would be so underestimated too, of they're both pretty. They both come off a little bit ditzy in their own way. These are two ladies that people are going to look at and underestimate. And yet you have Allriane, who's ruthlessly emotionally intelligent and knows how to get stuff done and do her own thing. And you have Rushu, who's got this incredibly brilliant strategist sort of mind who sees insights that aren't there. And I think they would just be so compatible if like their separate strengths would complement each other so perfectly. I just think they're awesome. I think they're great. I think, yeah. How could you not go for this ship?
Well, I think part of it is though, like, it's just, there's going to be a power imbalance, like, because Allriane needs someone who can meet on her level and like be a push to her pull. And I think Rushu, who's very brilliant and very talented, not that she's unequal to Allriane, but I think Allriane very clearly expresses a preference for someone she can play games with. Like, her gamesmanship with Breeze is part of the appeal of the relationship. And Rushu, I think, is someone who kind of abhors games almost.
You would not play
like
those games. Yeah.
She wants things to be straightforward. So
I'll leave unless someone has something like they really want to get in. I think I'm ready. Okay. This one was very tough. Yeah. I was swayed by every argument every time I heard it. I think I'm going to rule in favor of the ship. I think it was very compelling, the bit about, because I was sort of like, listen, I know what it's like to not be a very feminine woman and to like have that pushback. However, the ship team never made an argument that Allriane would try and change Rushu in this way, and I think that would not necessarily be part of that. I'm just like, listen, the whole like, super femme, not so femme. Like, I'm just like, I think it can work. It does work. Yeah. And
I think Allriane understands people enough that she would know that wouldn't go over well with Rushu, and that's not something Rushu needs.
Like, it could almost be, I know we're like not arguing.
Yeah,
I know, but it's
no, I'm just like, I like the idea.
I was very compelled by the ways that they wouldn't get along, actually very, because Matt, just like you were so close. Actually, like, I was just like, that is an argument that spoke to me. You almost had me on the rib.
Nice. All right, we are on to round 2. Let's just give a point total for our audio listeners. I am at 2, which is incredible. Alyx is at 2. Somehow Matt is at 1. Insane. Grace is at 2, and Shannon is at 3. All right, so I'm judging again. Matt and Alyx are shipping, and Grace and Shannon are ripping. And your characters are Spook, and I guarantee you're not going to guess who the second character is. It's Cultivation.
Okay.
This kind of helps because
digest this.
Yeah,
I don't really like Spook, so this is just fine.
I'm on rip. The randomness came in my favor.
Yeah.
Sometimes though, you have to like a character to be like, no, I don't like that ship for them. Maybe
what?
Right?
That's true. That's true. Mm-hmm. I just think I would feel worse about it if I was on the ship team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just if it's like any ship on a character you like, that kind of works. So it's like, oh no, this is impossible now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been on the opposite team I've wanted to be on
the whole time. No, we still have 4 more after this.
Yeah.
I was behind MeLaan and Charlie though, so yeah, that's the one I got behind.
Okay, I think I might have something.
All right.
The ship goes first, right? Ship goes first.
Sure.
Okay. Take it away.
So, I think fundamentally, Spook has one of the biggest growth as a character arcs throughout his series.
I already know where you're going with this.
Thank you. You can follow me there
instantly.
He goes from this like very shy can barely speak because all he knows is street slang, little street urchin guy, to like being the Lord Mistborn, establishing a new civilization and having just so many kids. You know, the guy got around apparently. And I think Cultivation is someone who is particularly interested in seeing people become what they're meant to be and see them reaching their potential in a way that is done in a way that is supposed to sort of feel natural. And, you know, you're not dragging someone to where they need to be. You're not forcing them to be better. You're helping them find their own potential. And so I think she would be really compelled by someone like Spook, who has some struggles along his way to figure out who he wants to be, but eventually does sort of reach a place where he is a little bit more stable and successful and kind of comes into his own in that way. So I think she would find him very interesting and would want to help him along that journey. And I also think Cultivation on the Spook side, Cultivation is a little bit of the like, let's play the mastermind games, let's play the long strategy. And I think given Spook's dynamic with Kelsier later in life, Spook's going to be a little more interested in somebody who has a plan and is figuring stuff out and telling where to go, and, you know, somebody who's sort of able to call the big picture shots, that he can kind of doesn't have to worry about some of that. He can sort of assist and be along for supporting their vision in a way that I think they would mesh really well together, actually, these two.
So for me, all I could think during that was just Spook's growth was not in character. It was just circumstances. He did not, ultimately, it's like, oh, learn to speak another language. Sure, he got better at speaking a language. That's not really what we've seen Cultivation do. Go to the core of a character and really rip in there and make him different. And I'm not saying Cultivation has to be responsible for this in him, but in terms of like, how does Spook really, the way Spook grows does not really exemplify what Cultivation has been shown to do with people. You know, it's what growth is can mean so many different things, but the style, the values in which Cultivation does this is not really has anything to do with how Spook grew up. And that's all he really did, was he went from a child to an adult. He didn't really grow.
Yeah, and so I'm going to sort of build on that. I think that can be seen with like the way that Spook gets his Mistborn powers. Harmony just kind of gives them to him, whereas with Cultivation, like, when she gives people powers, you know, it's a give and take. It's, you know, a boon and curse. Do you think she's going to respect the fact that Spook just woke up one day more powerful without having to put in the work and have like a challenge to overcome to get there? I don't think so.
Yeah, I think this is like this is the most perfect way that Stormlight and Mistborn's philosophies clash. And they clash in just such a way where they do not mix. This isn't like a magic system who wins in a fight. They are based on two totally different things. These are not compatible. When you get down to it.
I would tend to disagree, because I think Cultivation would see Spook like, you know, the acorn that starts to grow after the fire clears away what was before. And we've got that nice metaphor tying in with Spook being the survivor of the flames in book 3 of Mistborn. Because I do think he, like in book 3, he has this arc of thinking, this is what I'm supposed to be, and this is what I'm supposed to grow towards. Like, he has a plan in mind. He's kind of making himself like a second Kelsier, or a second what he thinks Kelsier would be. And then at the end comes to the realization, no, like, I can do my own thing and I can be different and go my own way. And that's when he gets his powers, after There's been some, I think, sacrifice and hardship on his part, right? He obviously, at the end, he gives up pewter, right, in order to do what he needs to do. He also burns tin so much that he leaves himself completely numb. And so while he is healed of that later, he was willing to push himself to that point, and he had a willingness to give that up. Similar, right? Dalinar gets his memories back eventually when he's ready for them. Just because you've given something up, just because you get something back, doesn't mean that giving it up was meaningless. And so I think Spook in some ways does fit Cultivation's pattern. And I also think Cultivation is about innovating and mixing things up. So just because something is a little different than what she's done in other scenarios doesn't mean it's uncharacteristic. In Spook's case, he starts as, an urchin who was abandoned, and ends up a Lord Mistborn. And I think she would see that juxtaposition very interesting. And as a ally or tool she could use in her machinations. From Spook's perspective, I think he's always wanted to be part of the bigger picture. He wants to be kind of a hero. He's sick of being the sidekick, the guy who's unfortunately sleeping in the tent next to the main couple on their wedding night. He wants his own story, and so I think Cultivation could be his vehicle towards that as well. So,
see, but those words you used, ally or tool, are like part of exactly why they wouldn't work. Cultivation is this powerful Cosmere being who has been around since the Shattering. We know she is a dragon. Is she even going to be interested in Spook, this kid from Mistborn Era 1 who kind of happened to be there when these big events went down? But I think the people we see Cultivation interested in romantically, or someone like Honor. I think the better comparison for if we do want to make a comparison for Spook, it would be someone more like Lift, who I think she views as more of her child. And I think that sort of disconnect there, in terms of, I think Spook is someone that she could maybe take a sort of maternal role towards under some circumstances if they met. You're young and I want to help you grow into the best version you can be. But that doesn't necessarily mean she'd be interested in him for a relationship. And I'm not sure exactly what Spook brings to the table there.
And all I can think, Era 2, ultimately, what we find out after the fact, after Era 1, Book 3, is that still Spook just goes back to being the hands of Kelsier. As soon as he's asked, boom, it doesn't feel like he's really his own man anymore. And it just felt like such a step backwards. I really don't think ultimately Spook was able to actually achieve being his own man kind of thing, his own ideal, his own thing. Ultimately, what I think of Spook and where he ultimately ended up is still just copy of Kelsier, second Kelsier. And even though it kind of goes against what in Book 3, I think this Era 2 moment really shows us how things ended and what he turned out to be for real. I just don't think he grows.
Okay, listen.
Okay.
I have...
All right, one last thing. Yeah.
Points. I'll go quick.
Okay.
So one, I think the appeal of Spook to Cultivation is that he is the weed in the sidewalk crack, who grew and succeeded sort of despite the odds, despite coming from the sort of really terrible situation, found a way to hold on, the rock bud in the lee of the storm sort of a thing that found his niche and held on and managed to get to a place where he was eventually successful throughout a lot of difficulty. And I think also a really important and compelling point for Cultivation is that Spook is leading a group of people from an era of wasteland, desolation, nothing is growing, into a new era of abundance and greenery and fecundity in their sort of world. And he's now sort of helping these people transition from this era that we have nothing to an era where we have so much. And my final point is that cultivation is a goddess of life and new life and abundance and perhaps fertility. And
I wondered if anyone was going to bring this up.
I have to bring it up. Spook clearly is a person also interested in abundance and fertility and bringing lots of new life into the world. I think they would have many, many, many children together, and they would both be very happy about this. Thank you.
Any final thoughts? I'm ready to call it.
Is my final thought.
I gotta admit, as soon as Alyx opened, I'm like, oh, I instantly see it. And it's like, oh, growth. Yeah, bringing like character growth and bringing the civilization back and boning. I went through that entire thing in like 5 seconds. The ship has it. I'm sorry, guys. That's wow. Oh, you're surprised, Matt?
I do genuinely think that cultivation would view Spook more as like the way she views Lift and not as like a romantic partner.
Look, you know, once you live 100 years, maybe you have a different experience on that. But
listen, that argument would have gotten me grace. So
I think there are just so many people who are willing to have babies. I'm just like,
he's the Elon Musk of Era 2. Okay, he likes giving. Also, you guys didn't say this, but you should have said. Well, we all know Spook is Dalinar, and Cultivation likes Dalinar.
What?
Oh God!
Oh, did you guys not watch the fake wob episode?
That's the April Fool's episode. Yeah. Oh man!
All right, Alyx, you are judging. So our team's shipping is Shannon Eric, and ripping is Matt Grace. Okay. All right. So this one we have Galladon.
Okay.
Oh boy.
That took me a second to remember who Galladon is.
Okay.
And Frost.
Do we know anything about Frost? I do.
We have a first-person letter from his perspective.
I'm actually ready to go instantly.
Are you?
I am ready to go, Shannon.
Okay, let me just quickly look up Galladon and Frost.
Sure. I mean, I think in my opening, I'm going to explain things. Okay.
Yeah, I'd say Eric, start going for it.
So, Galladon from Elantris is a member of the 17th Shard. And Frost is also a member of the 17th Shard, if not the creator. It's a little unclear.
I'm learning things about lore. in this for fun episode.
We're doing a recap now. It's not ship. We're recapping.
I've forgotten who these characters are.
So we know that they are aligned in goals, right? And for all we know, they are canonically together right now. That's 100% possible. Okay. First of all, I need to point that out. Now, Galladon already is very familiar with immortality, and Frost is a dragon. He's lived for millennia, and Galladon definitely understands that. He understands immortality in ways that so few could. And I think from Frost's letter to Hoyd, Frost seems a little, he's got a stick up his butt. Like he's not the most fun, right? And I think really Galladon brings that easy going energy that Frost would really need to balance him out. like Galladon's just a fun guy, right? And how many immortals are just like, yo, I'm a chill dude who I can just like grab a beer with? And I think Frost would be super down with that, to just hang with Galladon, and that's their meet cute. And then they are together in the 17th shard, and yeah, that's
it actually is a character interaction that I'm personally very fond of. First of all, I do prefer a ship where it's like I can kind of see how they met, and this one it's sort of like, oh, they're both part of the 17th shard. They probably have met off screen. Actually. Yeah. So to start, but I really do like the pairing of someone who's like a little bit cold, withdrawn, and even sharp, with someone who's like very like warm and refuses to let it get to them. This is one of my this is one of my favorite dynamics. And sort of like, I like the dynamic of Frost being like, I have to, he's doing his own thing, and then Galladon's just there like constantly throwing a wrench in his like emotional like fortress. He's out there like ruining the mood almost of like he's trying to be ultra serious. I like that they're on the same team like from the start. We know that they have at least like some shared values. No matter what, they've decided to align and work, and so I can definitely see this as like a long-term Galladon is just in there like coming back from his missions in and out and just being like, hey, how are things? And like Frost is like, oh, this guy, but then it like slowly becomes like I miss him when he's not here. And it's sort of like, oh, this would have been if Galladon was here, he would have said something like that really undercut my very serious thing. I just like, this is my perfect type of, I like the one very serious and one teasing a little. Like I can see that Galladon is always teasing. He's always warm. And he's like, here's a fun nickname for you, Frost. And Frost would be like, I hate this. But then he would miss it when it's not there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Matt, I'm feeling like I know what you're about to say. So please see if you are thinking the same thing that I am.
So I need to voice some objection to some flawed citation, I believe, is underlying the argument of my opponents. First, Galladon's nickname is Grump. He is a pessimistic man, not a fun trickster. That's his friend Raoden, who's the positive one. This is not a yin and yang situation with Frost and Galladon. This is a yin and yang, or yang and yang. I forget which is which, but anyway, it's that whole dynamic they just made up is entirely made up and not consistent.
I didn't say positive.
Yeah,
I didn't.
Absolutely not.
I would not characterize him as a jokester who's going to get Frost to have a little fun either.
I remember Elantris very differently.
Is that it? Because like that was
no. I'm going to
because I was like, that's not the vibe. We can disagree on vibes later, but Galladon had a vibe. He might have said negative things. He had a fun vibe.
He was very sarcastic.
Yep.
I'll also say, I might be wrong on this. This is something I'm fact checking. I believe it's Frost has friends at the 17th shard. Is it ever confirmed he's part of the organization? Is that a wob that has come out?
Let me see.
Didn't expect us to get into the wobs on Ship the Rivet, you listeners.
It's time for a wob episode. All right.
But, so anyway, those are just two little points of clarification. But to go from here, I'm going to say, so Frost is non-interventionist, and is basically all about, we won't interfere, the shards will do what they will do, and it will work out how it's going to happen. Don't get involved. Hoyd, you are meddling too much. And this would just play into Galladon's initial plot arc, where he's just kind of like, I can't change anything. I'm just, going to die eventually because the Shayad took me, and I'll just go mad from the pain, and that's all there is. And what's fun about Galladon's character is his dynamic with Raoden, who's a force of light, who is an interventionist, who is looking, okay, what can we do? And over the course of Elantris, Galladon kind of spirit returns to him, kind of, or he gets uplifted by Raoden's attitude. And so I think Frost's attitude of non-intervention would just play into Galladon's worst impulses, and not in a sexy way, just in a boring way, where it's like, we're not going to do anything. We're just going to observe things and be pessimistic and like just fatalists. And I think Galladon, in his work in the 17th Shard, is perhaps becoming a little more active, because he's actively doing things. So
yeah, and
I just don't think it works.
I just want to build off of that. You know, we know Frost does not like interfering with things that bear the touch of Adonalsium, and Galladon, as an Allriane, has like a shard's power imbued in him. I like, just on the level of like, Frost would not want to like be with Galladon because of the non-interference, because like it's like the thing with like Star Trek, where it's like, oh, you're not supposed to interfere with planets, and then Captain Kirk goes around and like seduces aliens on everyone, but like Frost is actually going to stick with the morals of like, no, I can't interfere, and like being with this person who bears the touch of a shard, bears the touch of Adonalsium's great design plan for the Cosmere within his soul through his abilities as an Allriane, is someone I can't be with.
Okay.
I have so many responses.
I want to go. I want to just talk about some wobs. I've been researching.
Yeah.
Okay,
sorry
cool.
if I haven't been paying attention as much.
Yeah.
But, so they both have non-intervention policies. Okay, so we don't explicitly have that Frost is the 17 Shards leader, surprisingly. However, I would say that the beliefs and objectives of the 17 Shard really match what Frost was saying, in that the shards were split up for a reason, and that non-interventionist policy.
Yeah,
and they're trying to track down Hoid. Like, it, at least they are friendly. At least.
Yeah,
okay?
We have on the Coppermind that Frost is at least associated. I do not see that it is even canon that Frost would refuse to work with invested people, or even insane. Or he absolutely does. Dragons probably, I don't know, they seem pretty invested themselves as a complete non-wob person. And listen, no matter what, like Galladon was saying, like, he sarcastic, he was always the bummer, but he is the comedic character in Elantris. Raoden might have been like the positive, gripping on with like his fingernails, like, to positivity, but Galladon was actually the comedic relief. So even though he was like theoretically the bummer, like the one cutting down ideas, he was actually doing it in a very funny, lighthearted way. Like, that's how he got through it. And to say that like he wouldn't get through like with any positivity whatsoever, like because he was like that in Elantris, ignores the fact that he had an arc in Elantris, and he ends Elantris and goes on to the rest of the Cosmere for a very full life, having like actually started to believe in Raoden. Like, that's his whole thing. We can't go backwards in time and say like, oh, at the start of Elantris, when Galladon was in misery, he didn't think this was possible, but he was proven wrong. He had an arc, and we're not going to go backwards in time and say, well, he would still think that way. He doesn't. Raoden proved him wrong, and now he's out in the Cosmere with a changed mind, a changed heart, and he's still going to be the comedic relief and be a little funny and sarcastic and cutting. And I think that like that's actually the perfect mix that would go with a serious sarcastic guy like Frost. So, like, serious sarcastic, funny sarcastic in a way that's like creates just enough friction to be interesting, but not enough for them to actually dislike or hate each other. I think they would actually like, or really click.
I don't know, not to undercut my teammate, I don't know if I'd say Frost is sarcastic necessarily. However,
it says so on the Coppermind page.
Oh, really? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. But regardless, great, perfect. They have their core tenets and beliefs and perspectives are similar. Like you can have some meets like and that work out really well. And I think that would be this case. And they have those similar philosophies. Their tone is different. And so that gives them that bit of dynamicism, right? That really makes it work.
I've really talked myself into this ship, so I'm
well, I'm just gonna say, like, I think so the Coppermind page, to cite a secondary source, says that Frost is sarcastic and insulting towards Hoyd. So you're generalizing a bit.
Okay,
yeah,
fair enough.
But they have a history and we know he's capable of it, and that's all we have to go on. I'm not going to make up stuff based on, he could be super nice and not sarcastic.
No, but what I'm saying is,
thing we got.
The thing you're saying he has in common with Galladon is with someone he kind of explicitly does not like. And so if you're expecting him to bond with Galladon over sarcasm, you're also expecting him to not like Galladon?
No, only if it's aimed at Galladon. It doesn't have to be. This is like the same kind of instinct in that when they have like the right circumstances, this is how they react. When you see someone, that you don't like, you go that place. It's like, speaks to me that they kind of like think the same way. They have like the initial root, the same response. It's not that they have to be sarcastic towards each other, but it's the kind of way of thinking of like, this is how we deal with things. This is how we deal with other people, etc.
Okay. All right. Small thoughts, and then I'm going to cut us off. Anybody last? Are we good to leave it there?
I'm good.
Okay.
Let's go into the lobs some more, Alyx.
Yeah, for one thing, with so many wobs and Coppermind citations for this Shifter Rifter round on me, of all people, as the judge. Okay.
I'm sorry, it was relevant.
Listen, I don't like it either, but I had to find out about these characters.
So people who know me know that I don't really care about Elantris very much. But wow, I just feel like this back and forth just really had everything. Like there were some great arguments. There were some arguments I thought were really bad. I thought Matt and Shannon doing the counter arguments was very good. I very much enjoyed you guys going back and forth.
That's quality content right there.
Yeah.
I have to decide.
You have to decide.
Am I awarding the win to like, do I ship it or not at the end of this? Or do I award the win to who do I think had the better arguments?
I think it's the former, not necessarily the latter. I don't think we rate it solely off the arguments, right? Like that's not the primary consideration. Maybe others are different.
As judge, I'm going to disagree with you, and I'm going to give it to the RIP team because I think their arguments were better.
Brutal.
They weren't.
I think
they weren't better.
They weren't.
It was a bad argument.
That was a bad argument.
The text. Yeah. You can't ignore the text.
Objection, Your Honor.
Exactly.
That's some
Shannon. You can't ignore the text.
I was correcting the text.
While you guys were doing your opening arguments, I was having the same thoughts that Matt was of like, isn't he called Grump actually? And he's like really like, I remembered him as the very sort of dour, sort of pessimist character. And I think you guys made very good arguments later, but yeah, it's hard. Yeah.
He's not dour.
I think, Matt, you won that for us. If anything, I think I detracted from us in that round.
They were good arguments. Why are you saying he had the better ones? He had the most insane book ignoring ones.
Some Elantris
you know
bias.
They're not good arguments, Shannon. You're going off the Coppermind article.
Because I still remember what I thought of Galladon when I read the book.
Just like, if he makes it all the way to Roshar and somebody who has just met him is still being like, all right, that guy's the Grump, I think he's still got the energy, you know? Anyway. This is my.
I almost want to reread Elantris and get my reactions of because
if you don't remember Elantris, then you can't just say, "Oh, he's the grump."
I think what happened here is I came out of this thinking I do a little bit want to ship this, but not in a way that you guys argued for.
Okay, well,
is part of what I'm coming at it.
Well,
I like the idea of them being like benchy coworkers about how much Hoyd sucks.
The point totals are extremely interesting with me at 2 and everyone else at 3. So that's pretty spicy. So we got a spicy end here. Matt, you are the next judge. All right.
Okay.
And
who am I judging?
Oh boy. Oh my god, guys. We and Alyx and Shannon are shipping. Sorry, I'm laughing because I looked at the character. And the ripping is Eric Grace. And our characters are Jasnah and the Sorceress from Tress. I'm glad we're getting some new characters. I'm a little sad we haven't gotten Gertruda or Dumad, but I'm glad we're getting some new ones. Hell yeah.
Shannon, do you have good opening thoughts?
I am still pissed, so I'm gonna let you take the opening.
Oh no! I betrayed you, and now we have to be teammates
for Destiny. 2 rounds in a row.
Oh no!
Okay. Oh no! Okay. That's such a shame for the ship team, right, Grace?
We're gonna be fine. Gray and I love each other. We're besties.
Yeah.
Well, I'm mad at everyone. It's not just you. Don't worry.
I tried, Shannon. I did my best, great. Which wasn't very good. But
I'm not mad at you. You're
okay.
fine.
Okay, cool. Perfect.
I'm going to lay out a vision for this ship. And it's that I think we have 2 characters who have a remarkable number of similarities, actually, as like very powerful women who do not necessarily really care about playing by other people's rules and are going to do their own thing and set out their sort of vision for the space around them in a way that's very competent and very intelligent. And I think you could make the ship argument there of like, oh, they'd respect each other as like they understand, fellow player of the game, lots of respect. But honestly, I want to see a ship between these 2 where they're like at odds with each other, because I think they would be fascinating sort of chess opponents in some kind of political game across the Cosmere. I think they are both have like a little bit of like nasty ruthlessness to them, that they would go after each other in a really interesting way. And yeah, perhaps that's a bit of an unorthodox approach, but I like a little bit more of the like rivals sort of a ship for these 2, grudging respect as they one up each other. And actually underneath all of it, there's a rising attraction as well, until, maybe something happens in a very dramatic moment. That's my take on Jasnah and the Sorceress.
But the thing about the Sorceress is that she enjoys cruelty. Like when Charlie came to her island, she didn't kill him. She transformed him into a rat. And the condition to take away that transformation, bring the person you love to me to get cursed in your stead. That is like a very cruel, vindictive thing to do for someone whose only crime was basically like coming to your island, like trespassing when you don't want them to, basically. Whereas Jasnah, I think a lot of what we see in her arc, especially at the end of Oathbringer, is she is deeply compassionate. She portrays herself as this very like pragmatic, ruthless person, but when it came down to it and she thought like, I kill Renarin to save the world, like she loved him enough that she could not do him. And I think that they are fundamentally incompatible for that reason. There's just something in the sorceress, that like cruel streak that I think Jasnah would be absolutely repulsed by and disgusted with if she ever saw it.
100% agree. Jasnah would not go for this, even if like there could be some intellectual like cat and mouse thing. Like I can sort of see that, but like it would never work, just because Jasnah can be brutal. She can be, right? With like God, not Rashon, the High Prince in Rhythm of War. You know who I'm talking about.
Yes.
It is Rashon.
I think
Ruth R.
There you go. Rashon's the Hearthstone one. Yeah. She uses that to make points, right? Like there's a point and an objective to it. She is not wantonly cruel. She does not go... I do not think she would go to another planet to just... that's backwards and just be like, yeah, I'm just going to use my magical powers and just lord over people. That's literally what the sorceress is doing. The sorceress is a mean, vindictive, horrible person that Jasnah could never love. I don't even think it could work as a villain ship. Like, I think they would just never get along, and Jasnah would be like, yeah, I need to kill you somehow. Let's get out my shard blade and let's see if it kills an Elantrian. Let's go. Like, I think that's how it'd go.
All that was coming to mind, I hope I can say this, is hate sex. It's just, you don't need love. You really don't. Sometimes attraction and a ball of hate is all that's between two people, and you're two powerful people with opposite values. Their morals are on complete opposite ends. And this is not necessarily a thing of like, oh, Jasnah doesn't need to have the instinct or drive to do the same things as the sorceress. She needs to see herself as someone capable of taking on the sorceress, and that's how it starts. Oh, the sorceress is beginning, has done this horrible thing, is doing this horrible thing. I'm someone who can stop her. And that's how it starts. She goes after the sorceress moves back, and all of a sudden now they're in a game. A hero and villain ship does not need both people to have the same level of affection.
Sure,
you know, it's this stuff really works even if one person, like the hero hates the villain and the villain is very intrigued. This is classic, tale as old as time. That's really all you need. This is not they're gonna fall in love and be a super great match. They're a terrible match, and that's why their horns locked together across, like, you know, in battle across the Cosmere, and occasionally sleeping together is exactly like what this comes down to. They could be it.
I have multiple problems with this. Okay. First off, I don't think the sorceress would want to be in that position, because we see, like, the second there's even a chance that Hoi could beat her, she runs. She does not want to be in a position where someone more powerful than her, even even on an equal footing with her, even has the option of taking her out. So I think, like, you talk about hate sex, she wouldn't want to be even that vulnerable with Jasnah. On the other hand, like, Jasnah is ace. She has sex with Hoyd because she respects him and she thinks that it's like going to like keep him there, and like she thinks that's what she should do. She doesn't enjoy it for its own sake, and she's not going to have sex with someone she dislikes.
I also just want to say that I don't think the argument of they are not aligned, therefore villain sex, like, I think there's a missing story piece. Like, you're like, yes, that can occur, but I don't think logically that, like, you didn't put a through line there that's like, yeah, that can work. I just don't see why it would work in this specific case. I'm just saying.
Allow me to fill in the piece, because
cool.
I think
Good
Shannon
luck.
and I are totally on the same page here with this.
This is how we think. We love hero villain ships.
This is like the thing. You know, The more I think about this, the more I like legitimately am really into this, like as a villain ship. Because I think there's so much of Jasnah is the sort of like rigid idealist. She is a knight radiant who has oath. She's very pragmatic, but she holds herself to these very stiff, high standards. And yet, despite this, I think we do see she has an interest in someone who's a little bit more like sharp-witted, jokey, kind of teasing a little bit in the way that she's with Hoid, even though she herself really isn't that way at all. And I think if Jasnah had to go up against someone who was a little bit more like, I'm just going to be cruel in a way that amuses me because, whatever, and had that sort of villain who was very unrepentant and sort of enjoyed being a mean person, I think the sorceress would enjoy like getting under Jasnah's skin in that way. Like, oh, don't you ever have fun, princess, sort of a thing. Maybe you ought to try it sometime. That sort of like back and forth dynamic of like Jasnah's here wanting to take this lady down because she's a problem, because she's lording over these, the lesser peoples of her world. And the sorceress I think the sorceress is the sort of person who like would prefer if someone as powerful as Jasnah was not coming after her. But as long as she has to deal with this, she's at least going to make it difficult for Jasnah and try to amuse herself in the meantime as they try to get the better of each other.
So my thing is, like, in terms of like the sorceress running away when there's someone, powerful that she doesn't really want to deal with. That's the whole thing with a cat and mouse game. Like the hunter shifts, like whoever like is most powerful, the positions change. Jasnah occasionally becoming the hunter and chasing her down. The sorceress might not have the ability to run away, back into her corner, and all of a sudden she has to fight. It's an equal thing. This is not necessarily a thing about the sorceress is always going to like flee and try to get away from this. The sorceress has this cruel streak, and that's what she likes about the cruel thing is the game of it. If Jasnah is such an equal partner, she would be able to keep her on the board, so to speak, and that's interesting.
But is it even an equal thing? Because the sorceress, for all her cruelty, for all the games she plays with the people of Lumar, like Hoid explicitly says, "Oh, you were too stupid to like see through the fact that I was using you." Like Jasnah is a very smart woman. I think that she would be able to outmaneuver the sorceress because, like, the sorceress thrives on being more advanced than the people around her, but that doesn't mean she's actually always the smartest or the most clever person in the same way that Jasnah is. I think in reality, Jasnah would, like, run circles around her. And if the sorceress caught her attention, would deal with her very quickly in a way that would not foster this relationship.
That's like my whole thing is that Hoid had a very specific purpose. He wasn't just going at her for the sake of going at her, which is very different from how we've been describing the Jasnah sorceress thing. The sorceress got into this whole game with Hoid because Hoid wanted something very specific with her and needed to pin her into a very specific corner, which is not necessarily the way it would always need to go. I do think Jasnah is smarter than the sorceress, but I also think the sorceress, when backed into a corner and realizing she can't do her whole lording over it thing, might have some hidden depths, might have to draw on some cleverness she's never had to depend on in a while. And that's the interesting part, is like the fact that the villain is not always the most powerful one, the fact that she would have to struggle and maybe have her own little training arc herself in order to keep up. That's the whole one person is in control and then it switches to the next person and the next person. It's always a bounce back.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm ready to decide unless anyone has some quick final thoughts.
All right.
You guys, when Eric said these characters, I immediately shipped it. It was very fun. But Grace convinced me. I have to go with I'm so sorry, Shannon, for making you more mad at me.
Hell yeah.
Your arguments were good, but
hell yeah.
So,
I felt like those were like some of my strongest arguments this episode, honestly. Like as I was like, I feel very good about
I just need to,
I feel like Grace's understanding of characterization in Tress of the Emerald Sea is really shining here. Like, I think you've thought a lot about these characters. There was just some things there that I couldn't quite get over. And then I was like, I'm not sure I ship this anymore. But I really wanted to. Because I love villain ships, and the dynamics you were talking about, I was so here for, but I was just like, but not sure if it works with these two specific characters.
I don't think it works in these two specific characters. Yeah.
I talked myself into it, so
it is amusing how you can talk yourself as like, no, now I actually really feel like this is trash or amazing.
I know, it's like when I first heard it, I was like, oh, that's fun, but I was now at the end of it, I'm like, no, these two characters would be terrible together, and Jasnah would just like ruthlessly assassinate the sorceress if she ever became.
I'm like, no, like Hoyt actually had to struggle. Like he didn't like just totally skunk her.
No.
Yeah,
it's like she's clever.
Could be like
she's actually clever. She's actually clever.
I think the big one, like the difference between being kind of brutal and being cruel, was one of the things that I found very, very compelling. And just thinking like that Jasnah like wouldn't mess around with that. Like that there's, as someone who kind of sets lines for herself, that messing around with something that kind of vindictive and petty, that's kind of where Grace swayed me. I definitely see the counter arguments.
I think there's a good comparison to be made between the sorceress and Allriane, and like Jasnah is like hates Allriane and would never like have a relation.
I think what's going on with Allriane is specifically very gendered, and I don't agree.
Okay, let's move on to the next one.
Okay.
Grace, you are in the lead for points with our only one at 4. Everyone else is at 3. The only problem is that you're judging next.
Yes.
So that's not
going to be true for much longer.
Yeah, I guess you're. So we're getting in there, and so our ship team is Shannon, Alyx, and our rip team is Matt, Eric. We are going to have Raboniel. So that's going to be a dangerous thing for Shannon, Alyx there with Raboniel. Dangerous for the RIP team is what I'm saying. And
Raboniel is very shippable. Let me just say,
pretty shippable.
Yeah, but Raboniel and Teft. Let's go.
So, the defense has perhaps, or the opposing side has maybe called us out a little bit over taking a while to come up with an opening argument.
Yeah, you've literally planned and PM'd things. We don't do that. There's other ones.
And part of the reason is because there are so many different ways that you can ship Raboniel and Teft, actually. And I think there's some really interesting ones. There's ones that I will not get into because, for reasons. But so I think like the straightforward one, you have to give it to the sort of villain ship. You could bring in the dynamic of like, hey, what if Galladon wasn't the one who was awake? What if it was Teft? What if they're the ones who are sort of facing off throughout this, the occupation in Rhythm of War? Like, I think when you do have two characters in Ship It or Rip It who do actually share book space with each other, putting them into the context can be really fun. And using some of that. Like I think Teft just has this stubborn streak in a way that's really different from Galladon's also a very determined and stubborn person, but Teft just like, he won't give any sort of a ground. He does not concede. And I think he would really like have an interesting dynamic with Raboniel as the person who is occupying his city, and if they had those interactions of going up against each other, like I think they would have really interesting clashes of the Windrunner trying to defend the people versus, the mad scientist occupation leader who's like, actually, I'm going to be, using all of these unconscious radiants for my nefarious ends. Windrunner, come at me if you really want to protect them. And Teft having to be a little smart of like Raboniel understands how radiants work, how a Windrunner thinks, and he can't just lean into his like initial instincts. I think it would force Teft to be clever in a way that I think Teft is not necessarily super well suited to, but would be really interesting if he had to go that direction.
Opposition sitting dead silently.
No, sorry. I was jotting something down. That's it.
Oh, okay.
You guys didn't have anything else?
Wow. No, this is actually a fallacy because sometimes the opening person only goes once and then the opposition goes. None of this meta.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think the dig was that they felt my argument was not substantive enough. Was what maybe Matt was getting at? Is that the card you're getting at?
Yeah, for sure.
Or is it dead silence and not having anything to respond to?
All right, what you got?
I just think so. First things first. I think any ship with Raboniel and a man is homophobic. I'm just gonna put that out there to start. Secondly,
that card on us. We're fighting dirty in this already. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I see what you brought to the table.
Secondly, so Raboniel, what we see, I think, comes to respect Navani in the books because of, shared interests and their intellectual compatibility. And I think, Teft isn't a dummy. I think he's a very insightful person, but I don't think he would meet Raboniel at the level she would be looking for someone to meet her at. Also, Raboniel is very dismissive of mortal life, both human and singer. And Teft is very careless or dismissive initially with his own life, but actually very much cares about other people. So I think there's a value difference there where there's not a lot of common ground, because we talk a lot about villain ships and how it can be fun to be these opposing forces. But I think the thing about those is you do need some ground for the attraction or the chemistry to blossom in. And I think what these two have is some very differing opposing viewpoints and not a lot of ground for that opposition to be turned into tension and into chemistry. So I don't really see any chemistry between these two characters. I don't really see a lot that they would have in common, to be honest. And I don't think Teft overcomes Raboniel's kind of outer shell the way Navani would. And from Teft's perspective, I think he's just Raboniel's the next in a long line of overlords or rulers who's dominating Urithiru, and his arc is kind of a Dark Eyes is more about making his own way and coming out from under that. And so I just don't think that ship makes sense for either character.
It was a very thorough analysis, Matt. Honestly.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, the argument that Raboniel can't be shipped with a man when she canonically has a child is biphobic. So
yeah, fair. That's a fair point.
We're all having fun here, just to be clear.
Yeah.
In terms of mutual respect, we definitely know what she does respect. Raboniel definitely respects Navani's mind, but she also does respect the resistance. She'll crush the resistance, but she does she doesn't she's not full of disgust. She's like, okay, good attempt, good try. I do think this is an angle that can work. She will, and she does respect life. Her ultimate goal, she has some minor goals. She wants to be the one to win, but her ultimate goal is that she wants the war to stop. She wants lives to stop being wasted. So in terms of her values, they aren't as mad scientist or as cruel or as villainous as described by the opposition. She actually does have some basic connection that the humans would understand. And that's the whole point of by the end of the Rhythm of War arc, we see that Raboniel actually does have a sense of virtue. Like, she has a goal that we recognize as moral. So in terms of that, this isn't this doesn't have to be like a pure hero villain ship of they could never understand each other. I think they could. And the whole thing with Teft's journey, his whole thing about overcoming his addiction and standing strong on his own did happen in the same occupation. It's just he wasn't the one. Galladon has to take over, of course, right? So he has to be the hero. But there was an element of Teft having his big hero moment of I'm the one who's discovering myself. I think he's being sold a little bit short to say he could never have been the one to stand up to her. And I think he could have been the one to win some mutual respect from Raboniel in his effort to try. I do think he would have lost, but I think there would have been a pretty damn solid effort.
Eric, do you want to go? Otherwise,
yeah, I do. I do think Teft could have opposed Raboniel for a while. I just don't think that would have led to the chemistry. I think that's what Matt's core point is. I do think these two could have some mutual respect if Teft was in that role of Galladon in that situation. So I think that is fair. I just don't think that would rise to the level of a villainship at all. And also, I would argue that Raboniel wants the cycle to stop, and I think if she was presented with a choice of kill tons of people to make that happen, she would take that choice. I don't know if respect for life is what I would say. I would say, indeed, Shannon, she is not as disrespectful of life as she's first introduced in Rhythm of War. That's definitely true. But at the same time, she's 1 in 10 humans, 1 in 10 singers. I'm totally cool with that. That's totally fine. I think she would be okay with even higher proportions of death to get what she wants. And I don't think Teft would be okay with that.
Just in terms of what she wants is a stop to it. And that's my ultimate point.
I think this is a really sort of when we take a villain ship route, a lot of times it can be this sort of fun clash of different personalities with different objectives. I think the way that I really see the Raboniel Teft ship is really a tragic one. And I think part of that comes from actually a shared sense of tragedy that the two of them have, particularly around surviving their family members and holding themselves at fault to what have happened to their family members. But there's a difference between the two that I think is fun as well, of Teft feels responsible for his family members having died and is carrying that weight and carrying that hurt, whereas Raboniel is carrying the weight of she has survived her daughter, but her daughter's still alive. It's her daughter's persistent survival that is sort of the awful tragedy that she's feeling responsible for in a way that is sort of difficult to bear. And I think there is, if we lean into that sort of tragic vibe, these are both characters who are inevitably killed by the developments that are the scientific discoveries that happen throughout this book. And I think you could do a rework of the end of sort of Rhythm of War where sort of they are more directly responsible for each other's deaths with these new anti-light daggers of Teft losing Fendorana and subsequently perishing in the same way that's also the way that Raboniel, it's her undoing as well. I think that is what was so compelling about what happened between Raboniel and Navani. And yet Teft also had that. It just wasn't in the same location. Like they have these sort of shared narrative arcs that if you put them together in the same scenario, I think there is a lot of compelling dynamic there that could be explored.
The thing for me is I just think that pairing someone who has these kind of the self-destructive tendencies that Teft has with an antagonist whose end goal is end it all just kind of gets into some problematic territory for Teft's arc, because it's kind of like, yeah, no, we're just calling it quits because the cycle's broken and it's never getting better. Whereas Teft's arc, right, is about overcoming his previous cycle. So, and especially if we're agreed that Raboniel is going to be the victor in this ideology clash, having her come out on top at the end, I just don't think it works with the messaging that Teft's arc is supposed to set up.
I don't think I agree with that phrasing or the concept, because both are about stopping a bad cycle. Addiction is a cycle, and that's like what his whole thing was. It's not you can phrase it so like his cycle is like about keep going, like continue going with the circle, but his circle is addiction's bad, he needs to stop where he's at. They both want to stop something bad that's happened, and I think like Teft had a victory in Rhythm of War, and we hope that Raboniel will have one too, but I think it's more mirrored. Actually, I think it's more mirrored than not, in terms of they both like have this desire to see something bad stopped.
Yeah, but Raboniel's way of stopping that is potentially killing everyone.
Oh, potentially, but like she's willing to accept something different. Like that's not her. She's not married to that idea.
I'm gonna call it.
Okay.
I think the pros win this one.
Yeah.
That was
some good argumentation for sure.
Yeah, some very, very good arguments there.
God, that was so hard. Oh man, that was a really, really difficult ship to argue for.
Rough, for sure.
Ooh, thank you.
Right.
You guys did a really good job.
Yeah.
And Shannon needed to get that. That was Shannon's last chance to get points.
It's true. So Shannon is judging. And our character, who do we have here? Oh, this is interesting. We're going to have Blushweaver and Allik. And our ship is Matt Grace, and our rip is Alyx Eric.
So Blushweaver Allik, I think, falls into this kind of classic realm of really, really kind of hot, flirtatious, mixed with awkward and nerdy. And it's like a tried and true stereotype that is tried and true for a reason, and that it's worked in a lot of different media over time. Blushweaver is really cool in that she subverts some of the stereotypes of that in some ways, and like she shows she's very clever, she's very politically astute. And Allik, even though he's kind of got like what we were talking about with Rushu, like he's got almost a little bit of that vibe too, where he's like, he knows stuff about the stuff he knows about, but can be a little oblivious or a little awkward. So there would be this fun interplay of Blushweaver being this very like adept social engineer or navigator of the social space, where Allik is kind of more bumbling, but then maybe at first you could have the dynamic of Blushweaver, kind of like in Tress, how they keep thinking that Tress is a king's mask, even though she's like, no, I'm just being random. You could have Blushweaver being like, oh, he's a master of social craft because he's this act of him being just kind of off-putting is throwing me off my game. And then when she's off her game, that's where the vulnerability happens, feelings blossom. I just think it's a pretty easy, fun ship to see.
So my thoughts about the ship are that honestly, I think Blushweaver would weave too many blushes for Allik. I think she's just a little too intimidating for him. You know, Allik is someone that we met during a time in his life when he had been through something really frightening and kind of devastating, this loss of his crew. It was really overwhelming. And from what we've seen of him since is that he is really looking for like soft, chill, nice domestic vibes where he can stay at home and make cookies and, you know, have this very comfortable thing. Blushweaver is overwhelming. She's great. I love Blushweaver, but she's like an incredibly intense, gorgeous goddess who's this political power, who's a mover and shaker in her world, who's like this intimidating political mastermind who's playing all of these games. And I don't think she would necessarily find anything interesting in Allik, and I think he would just be sort of overwhelmed and intimidated and would not find being around her to be something that he enjoyed doing and would want to continue doing. I think they would not. It would be a bad meeting if they were to meet up. It wouldn't go well.
Allik is not at Blushweaver's level, right? Like I don't think
he doesn't want to be,
and he doesn't want to be. So I don't think Blushweaver has. I can't see a situation where Blushweaver is going to be into it. Like it's just not possible.
But I think this is like the classic, you know, example of like, she is the go-getter, she is the political figure, she is the one out making moves, making connections, but then he's like the homebody. He's at home baking cookies and supporting her career. And like, I think that is, you know, what Blushweaver needs in a partner. You know, she is capable of, she is, you know, like we said, kind of, maybe she is initially intimidating, but once that sort of initial intimidation passes, she needs a partner who isn't going to be threatened by like her and what she can do. And I think Allik is sort of the perfect person to be that sort of supportive boyfriend or husband who can, you know, take care of things at home while she shines in, you know, her political life.
Mm-hmm. Like Allik's already shown that he's very capable at supporting a dynamic, interesting boss woman with Marasi. So I would put Marasi and Blushweaver in similar categories. And I think he would fulfill a similar role there, like Grace said. And from Blushweaver's perspective, I think she finds unconventionality somewhat attractive. You can see her kind of fascination with Lightsong in Warbreaker. And granted, Lightsong and Allik are very different characters, but I think the way she finds it, Lightsong's failure to adhere to kind of convention or expected, the surprise of Lightsong, I think the way she appreciates that, she could also appreciate the surprise or novelty presented by Allik. And yeah, like, and she needs some like, and oh man, it would be such a fun like little AU, like if Allik came as like a new acolyte into Blushweaver's priesthood, and then like, you know, he's like very intimidated and kind of like fanboy-y over her at first. Like maybe he catches her in a vulnerable moment or something, and then starts to see her differently. And she grows kind of despite herself to trust him, and is like, why do I like this rando person around? But she just finds him very calming. And we know Blushweaver could protect and take care of Allik because she is good at what she does. So I see it.
I'll just say I think Blushweaver would not be interested in someone who's like fanboying over her. Like, I think that is absolutely not her vibe. Like, I think she likes the game of trying to get Light Song, who's like trying not to be with her and trying to tempt him over. Like, she likes that game. She would just not have that game at all. Like, so I don't think I think she would actively not like that. Like, I think she would enjoy the attention, but wouldn't. Because I mean, she's gorgeous. So she's clearly, that's what she's going for. But I don't think that would mean that she is interested in that person. So I think that's a very important distinction there.
But I just want to say, like, the Southern Scadrians and Allik do kind of revere Allomancers, and he ends up in a relationship with Marasi. And, I don't necessarily think that just because she is sort of viewed as like a goddess, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be immediately fanboying over her. Like, he was raised in a culture that views Allomancers in this very respectful, reverent way, but we don't always see him act that way towards the Allomancers in the story. So I think this idea of, he's going to be immediately fangirling over Blushweaver and she isn't necessarily going to like that isn't necessarily true. I think Allik is someone who is going to be, once he gets to know her, more attracted to like her mind and like the strength of her as a person.
I think the point about sort of his relationship with Marasi in terms of his sort of cultural reverence for people with power is a very good one, because it's also something I was thinking about. But I do think it would end up being less of what I think the dynamic between them would be less like what he has with Marasi and a little bit more like what he sort of has with Wax in terms of the Allomancy reverence, where he kind of can't stop himself from using the titles. And Wax is like, stop calling me by a weird Allomancy. Like, this is exhausting. And like Wax and Marasi are much closer, I think, to like normal people, even though he's raised in a culture that reveals Allomancers, than someone like Blushweaver, who is like a goddess upon the earth, returned from the dead, sustained by the souls of the penitent each week. Like, I think she's a level above in terms of the way that people revere her and the kind of just sort of being that she is that inspires that kind of reverence, that I think it would be really tough for him to get over that sort of cultural, like, oh no, we duck our head and we say the respectful thing. And we like, I think he has a lot of that ingrained, and I don't think he'd be able to get over it when he's around Blushweaver.
But you talk about him saying the respectful thing, but like some of the titles that he uses for Wax are like, oh great impetuous one, or like unobservant master. Those aren't necessarily respectful. Those are teasing in a way that I think he has it in him to be teasing in a way that would be very reciprocal with what sort of Blushweaver does, because Blushweaver is someone who enjoys that teasing.
And you could almost run it as like a Howl Sophie dynamic, like from Howl's Moving Castle, like with Blushweaver being this revered, like intimidating figure, and Allik kind of being somewhat grounding for her, right? And coming in and being like a little more down to earth, and maybe treating her with respect, yes, but like not the respect of using super flowery language and being super over the top and putting her on a pedestal, but like the cute little, oh, like I need to make sure she's eaten kind of care and reverence that might break through some of those barriers.
I am ready, but does anyone want to sneak in a thought?
Yeah, I hear all what you're saying, but I just don't see Blushweaver being interested in Allik. Like that, I even granting all that and like Allik getting over that, like I don't really see what Blushweaver, like there's not enough for Blushweaver to be interested in.
final snuck-in thoughts from the ships?
You're just wrong.
Okay.
You're wrong. Wow. Yeah.
Okay. I am going to give this one to the Rips. Actually, Eric kind of got to it before I could even say it. I was like, those are really, really great points on Allik. But it was sort of like, oh, I'm just not convinced on the Blushweaver side. It's sort of like my thing, and it was like that was my main thing I was waiting to be swayed on, and I don't think I was. I think I was waiting for like almost a comparison to like Light Song. It was like because she has a thing like there's a thing where like you can see chemistry there. So I was like, okay, like how could Allik capture her interest? Because I think he would have to be more like
because he's unconventional.
I think you guys did really well.
You got me, Matt. I thought it was really
like
sweet.
Especially with the teasy dynamic. I'm like, oh no, we're losing it. So it's like, no, like it's so hard when the ship has a good point and you're just like, I just don't see it. Like it's really rough because you feel like you need to say more because that's just not like very compelling, right?
Every judge, we've all judged a little bit differently, and I think it's okay. Like my thing is like I come in with a little bit of an idea of my own, and I'm willing to sway me.
That's me too.
Yeah.
I think like it's one of the things I was thinking about slipping in at the end was comparing. But I was like, I'm not sure if this works.
Okay.
Was like Light Song in his not returned form is kind of a like dumpy, like plain, like not interesting guy, little scribe man. And I was trying to think of a way I could work that in, but Blushweaver never finds that out about Light Song. So I'd have to argue that he was like giving off that energy.
Yeah, he's a loser in his heart, but so she could be attracted to like someone normie. She could be attracted to a normie.
Yeah.
All right. So our point total in last place is actually Matt with 3 points. Grace,
this
Shannon
is deserved. This is
oh, you think so, Matt? Yeah.
This is. I ripped Rishendi, so this is karma.
All right. Grace, Shannon, and me are tied for second place at 4, which I'm shocked. And our winner is Alyx with 5. Hell yeah. Nailed it.
I didn't realize I'd made that much ground because I was like the last person to get points, wasn't I?
I was fully aware going into the last that it was me or like whichever of the two of us won that won the game.
I don't do enough math as we're doing this. I
just checked the scores going into the final rounds because I knew I was like ahead.
But
we had a scoreboard at the top. I didn't see that.
Cool. Oh yeah, there was a scoreboard. So, yeah.
Excellent.
This is why I didn't volunteer. Yeah.
I think the judges sided with Rip more than they decided with Ship this time.
Ooh, I would have to count that. I'm not tracking that currently. That is an interesting point. But
I don't know why you think you're bad at this, Eric. Like,
yeah, Eric, you did really well.
Yeah, like you have like just bring up
the
it's about character arc, what's on the page, bring it in. That works. Yeah.
Give me this over a WoW episode any day.
Let's do a WoW episode. Look, I gotta admit, I still think Shannon and I were robbed on the Galladon Frost one.
That's
fair.
We're robbed.
I really was. There were very good arguments on both sides and arguments that I really didn't like on both sides. And I just, I had to make a choice in the end. I'm sorry. It could have gone either way.
And I would have been tied for first.
This is actually why I didn't volunteer for this episode, because I remember how I felt from the last time I lost. And not winning is the same as losing. And
you're Brennan. You're basically Brennan.
Have fun with it.
And now it's like, God, let this happen again another 2 years. So like the memory of this fades. It's not going to. But
oh no, it's so much fun. Shannon. Come on.
It's fine if I lose on like Wayne Ruin. Who cares? When I've bought into when I think my arguments are actually good and I lose. Yeah.
The way Alyx judged that one, I think, was so like like what you were talking about with different judges' styles. Like when she said, like, I could kind of ship it, but the way I ship it wasn't the way you were arguing it. Like, you know, like you can kind of take from that.
I do think there is an element of like, if you're the judge and you have like, oh, this is what I would argue, and the team that's shipping it doesn't hit that, it can be like kind of detrimental to like, you're like, oh, but this was like in your mind, you're like, oh, but this was the perfect angle, and like you missed the mark.
But that doesn't speak to like the quality of the argument necessarily, but it does speak to like, and why a good argument can fail to convince a judge.
I'm a person who really does lean the judging on what I feel is quality of the argument. Because, you know, sometimes you get a ship that's like, oh, that ship has instant chemistry that anybody can see. But if the RIP team like pulls it out with something really creative, like you got to respect that sort of a thing. So
and this is like if you have a different philosophy from the judge, then there's emotions.
I did think it funny that sometimes it seemed like this episode more than previous ones, it seemed like people, like if they started arguing something, really did come to believe it, or at least I felt that. Because like in other episodes, there's been times where I'm like, oh, how am I going to get behind that? And then I do it. And then I do, but I still like believe the original thing. Whereas this time I felt like I was convincing myself more often.
So we are not going to end the show with another game show segment, because this already we're already over 3 hours in the recording. Maybe it's probably be a little tighter for you listening. Glory to Alyx there for victory. But tight game. Honestly, a tight game this time. Like really game. Could have gone any direction. So
tight shirt.
Tight shirt.
3-way tie per second, you know? This is a neck and neck sort of a fight.
Yeah, it really was. You can find us on 17char.com for all your news, discussion, theories, and fun that you could ever want. We have a sweet Discord server. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud, and YouTube. If you want to support us, you can support us in 2 ways. You can support us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. You can also put a super comment, and you can do that too, just in the comments below if you want to support us. And yeah, what is going on next? So I think what we're gonna have is we're finally gonna do Frugal Wizard reactions, and we're gonna have Secret Project 3. So that's what's coming up next. New books and getting back to Frugal Wizard, but you know, we can get more people on the Frugal Wizard one than when we could in April. So yay. And also, I do just want to say, if you missed our trailer for Secrets in Stained Glass, that has come out. And so in less than let me just look at the time. In about a week, you can look at a show that we have been working on for a really long time. The production pipeline, like since October, November. We had session 0 in December, or one of our session 0s. So go check it out. Alyx has spent so much time editing it. And so I hope you'll like it.
Please watch Secrets in Stained Glass. This has been my life for like 8 months. We worked really hard on it.
And do it for Alyx.
Do it for Alyx.
She deserves all the cred for the amazing editing work that she's doing.
Also, very good stuff. It's super fun. You guys are gonna love it.
It's pretty sweet. But yeah, so we'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Oh.